Hey guys, Saf here with another Raid Shadow Legends video. So today we have had the announcement of a brand new faction to Raid Shadow Legends. We are going to be entering the realms, the woodland realms of the Nizerian elves, even though they're called the Sylvan Watchers. If we look at the description, they're called, I think they live in a city called Nyresa or Nysera. So it's really, really interesting. I like the fact they are targeting sort of this like druidic style elven culture. It looks really cool, like woodland elf realm. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to take a look at the legendary champions that are getting released with this patch. So that includes the 4 legendaries that are in the new faction, plus Morrigaine the fusion. We're going to have another look at that. And there's also a new Shadowkin green Ghost Rider kind of champion. I've just come off watching Hellhades on Twitch. He was streaming the new test server. And so far, some of these champions in this new faction, and the Ghost Rider in particular, look amazing. So I'm going to go through these champions. I'm going to give you my opinion about how I think they can play, how good they are. We're going to look at them all. And then I think tomorrow's video, we're going to look at the epic and rares. And then Friday, we'll probably have other content out there as well. We are doing a podcast this week as well. So that is back on the menu. So a very busy week in Raid Shadow Legends. So let's take a look at the first champion. You can go to hellhades.com now. All of the new champions are up on the website. We are working through some bios. The ratings are very much initial thoughts, initial ideas. I'm sure Hellhades will update them as he has time to test them on the test server. Obviously, we don't get access to the test server, so we have to kind of put this information up there after the fact. So it's going to take us about a day to get it all together. But we do have a faction page of them all up. We do have all the champions listed, all their skills, their cooldowns. We don't know anything about their multipliers. But we think all of this is coming Thursday, so we'll know by then. So Morrigaine, I gave my initial opinions on Morrigaine in the video on when they announced the fusion. Now we can see things like the base stats, the different animations. She looks freaking cool. I saw her briefly on Hellhades test stream. She looked amazing. She's got like this watery mist thing happening. She does have an incredibly high base speed of 112 speed. So what I would say as follow on from my last video, if your account doesn't have a Lysandra, it doesn't have a Deacon, it doesn't have many good turn meter boosting and stealing options like a Sylar, like a Vladimir, this champion is actually probably very worth picking up. It's a very good champion. The A3 is incredibly powerful. So let's just remind ourselves of the kit. We can scroll down here. So we've got a nice little bio written up on the website. So we've got Haunt with Hesitation. She's going to do an A1 decrease speed. Now, it's not guaranteed, so if you're thinking Iron Twins, Kurzad is stronger, and he's a rare, but it's still nice to have a single target decrease speed. It's just not ideal for places like Hydra, where you've got 4 targets. A lot of the other bosses it's not going to work for. Will work for something like Scarab. If you want to use like a Blood Shield ring with her, she could really go into that. She's probably very, very good for Dark Fae. Her 2 best areas, and I think we've rated her here, her 2 best areas are Dark Fae and probably the Scarab King. He's actually quite low on the Scarab King. I would rate him probably a bit higher than that. But these things are very fluid. We've got her at the moment as a 4-star overall. She's going to be a pretty good carry on this A3. Velomacy has a 75% chance of decreasing the turn meter. It's booked to 100% by 20%. Fills the turn meter then by 20% for all allies and gives you the speed buff. So if you compare it to a Lysandra ability, she does 30% steal, 30% fill, 30% buff. Deacon, I think, has a 15 steal, 15 fill, 30%. So in terms of a tier list, it would probably go something like, in terms of just this ability alone, Lysandra, then this champion, Morrigaine, then Deacon. However, Deacon also brings AoE decreased defense and a leech, which she doesn't bring any sort of decreased defense. She does have a true fear, which is nice. But for a high-end account like myself, that's not something I even think about. Potentially, she could have some usage alongside a Fortis in my teams. This passive is just funky. I don't really know what to do with this, to be honest. It's kind of useful, maybe if you just kind of get it on a single enemy to stop them healing. Maybe a counter a bit to the Wither, I've heard people say. What do I think overall? This champion is a good fusion, but not a crazy fusion. If you have the resources to go for it, you don't have any of those speed champions that I was talking about, I would probably recommend you definitely go for it. I've had some people DM me today going, this is my account, do I have, should I go for this fusion? And I'm like, yeah, probably, because you don't have those champions. But if you have a Lysandra, she probably outweighs in terms of just that pure turn meter, because obviously Lysandra on the A2 has a 100% turn meter drop as well. So if we're running Dark Fae, Lysandra is better than Morrigaine. If we're thinking generally, Deacon is overall a better champion because of the decreased defense that he brings. It's more valuable really than control and decreased accuracy. But it's nice as well that at least they've got a component here that, hey, if you get to the boss, the true fear helps you on the waves, the decreased accuracy helps you on the boss. So that's nice. I think overall, I'd rate this champion about 4-star, and I think if you get her, you won't be disappointed. But I think for a lot of high-end accounts like myself, we're probably not that excited. I'm going to be going for this champion, and I will do content on this champion. So that's Morrigaine. We've got some basic mastery setup here. We've recommended some blessings. Aura, obviously, she's a speed aura, so if you're going to use her in lead, then that's probably a good idea. Brimstone is another good option for Iron Twins, although it will proc the passive, so keep that in mind. And then if you're using her in arena defense, Polymorph is kind of the king of defense at the moment. But these things could change. This is initial thoughts. I'm sure Hellhades will update the guide as he does his videos on the Fusion Champion. Next up, we have Michinaki. Michinaki is a Shadowkin, and let's be honest, we'll call this champion the Green Ghost Rider, because his name is kind of awkward to say, but he is literally Ghost Rider. If you've ever seen the film Ghost Rider, he looks like him, like samurai-style Ghost Rider. He looks freaking awesome. I'm going to say this now, this champion, after watching on Hellhades test stream, is probably one of the best defense nukers in the game, 2, the best Hex champion in the game outside of Mithrala's abilities, and 3 is kind of like insane HP burner at the same time. So in terms of base stats, we can see he's got a 1465 defense. It's like an above average to high. He's like in the middle between something that's really good and something that's above average. Speed is about 101. That's great. Lower crit damage, so that tells you he's maybe not the best damage dealer, but he actually is. In terms of the ratings, we've got him as 4.5 at the moment. He's probably 5 out of 5 in Clan Boss. He's probably 5 out of 5 for Hydra, and I'll tell you why. Let's look at his kit. He's got an A1 HP burn on a 60% chance. Now, you might be thinking that's only a single target burner, but when you compare it with Courser of Curses, I don't know how you say that, whenever an ally attacks an enemy under Hex, this champion has a 50% chance to team up to join the ally's attack. Basically, Cardiel's passive. That's insane. There's no cooldown on this. He's got a 50-50 chance whenever you hit a Hex target that he will join your attack. And if he joins your attack, you can place a HP burn. So you can quickly see how, even though it's a single target, the fact that it can do it on this joint attack, you can just keep picking different targets and say Hydra. Now you've got an AoE HP burn. You could do it in sort of Doom Tower waves. You can do it in sort of different places. And most other places where you want a burn is single target anyway. So he's just going to do more damage. And the nice thing is he can provide his own Hex, but he doesn't have to. He'll attack all enemies 2 times. So it's a double hit. Deals with things like Rotus if you did want to use him as a defense-based nuker. The first hit removes all buffs from each target. The second hit places a Hex. Almost a guaranteed Hex. If you can get the accuracy checks and you don't get any 3%, it's on a 3-turn cooldown. So that means he's pretty much going to sustain the Hex himself. And then we have another AoE that places a decreased defense and a decreased attack if you have a Hex out. The decreased defense doesn't require Hex, the decreased attack does. So what you get is an AoE, a decreased defense and decreased attack, an AoE buff removal, every single buff, that then places the Hex on top, 2 AoE abilities, and effectively an AoE HP burn because of his passive. It is an insane kit. He also has a 30% defense aura with pretty good base stats. We've got him 4 out of 5. Hydra, Clan Boss, Doom Tower waves, going to be very, very good at. Dragon he's probably going to be excellent at just purely because the damage output and the burning. Arena defense he's probably going to be great because he's defensive based as an option. Pairing with a Mithrala, pairing with someone who can place Hex, and you've got yourself a bit of a setup. This guy is a Shadowkin, so there's a potential maybe he might be put into sort of a guaranteed legendary option. He is a Halloween champion. Then again, we could get one of the other champions. However, if you pull Michinaki, I would be very happy. It looks a great champion. Next up, we have Elva Autumnborn. This is one of the first Sylvan Watchers we're going to look at here, and look at the visuals of this champion. It looks amazing. Obviously, I don't have access to the test server, so I can't spin it around and show you, but, you know, it looks like some sort of dryad out of Warhammer or something of that nature. Again, really good base speed, 110. It's a magic support champion. Great base defense, great base HP. She's going to stay alive, which is really good. Obviously, by looking at these stats, we know she's not a damage dealer, but as a support champion, looks great. So what does she do? She attacks one enemy and places a continuous heal buff on 2 turns with the ally with the lowest HP. So that's a Wither A1, essentially, Wither the Crowned. The A2 then has a 75% chance, buck to 100%, of removing all debuffs from all allies, then places it at block debuffs, then places an increased speed buff. Basically get, with 3 turns when you fully book it, a 100% buff removal, 100% block debuffs, and 100% chance to place increased speed. I think that is the first champion in this game that does all 3 together, which is very interesting for Clan Boss. We've had Ares that can remove 1 buff and place speed buff. We have people like Duchess and Siphi who can place the block debuffs. And I think Siphi places the increased speed, but she doesn't cleanse. This champion actually fully cleanses, then places it. That's really, really strong. In any setting, whether that's in arena, PvE, someone got block buffs, cleanse, place this. Brilliant. And it's on a 3-turn cooldown. Then we get Sprouting Season. Revives a target with 40% HP and 50% turn meter. Okay, so a single target revive, a bit like Siphi, then places a 60% increased defense and a 50% increased attack on that ally for 2 turns. So that means you can use this with either a defense-based nuke or an attack-based nuke if you want to. You've got the flexibility. That's on a 3-turn cooldown. And we also have a passive that heals each ally by 10% of their max HP at the start of their turn. Places a perfect veil for 1 turn on the ally with the lowest HP and ends of this champion's turn. Okay, so that's actually insane. So if we think in arena how this works, Elva takes a turn. Say like you've got a Candrathon who's got the lowest HP. He's going to get a veil every single turn, and everyone's going to get like a Siphi A1 heal. On top of the fact we have a single target revive and a full cleanse. So you put this champion in Stone Skin, she comes in and cleanses the entire team if they're still alive. Then you've got a heal on top of the veil which gives Candrathon his damage. This champion is insane. Very, very strong. We got some blessings recommended here. She has an increased speed in all battles, 19%, so aura is there. Defense, obviously polymorph. And we've got a brimstone for late game, probably because it's a single target, so that's pretty good for like targeted brimstone and Hydra. This champion is a 5 out of 5. We've got it as 5 out of 5. We've put it kind of like 4 ratings here. Hydra, Doom Tower, 100% 5 out of 5. Probably deserves a much better arena score here than we've put. So these ratings are still a little bit off, but this champion is 100% a 5 out of 5, I think. Clan Boss for sure. You know, having that increased speed with block debuffs, 2 of the biggest affinity issues. I'm very impressed with Elva Autumnborn. It's not Void Legendary either. You know, if you think Siphi is a Void Legendary, Duchess is obviously Spirit, but she does something slightly different. She's more of a healer type Duchess, which is really nice. So that's Elva Autumnborn. I think that champion is like S tier. Really, really strong. Next up, we get Greenwarden Ruarc. Now, he is one of the 2 new champions to have this new buff called Taunt. And the TLDR of Taunt is, think of it like a provoke that doesn't force skills. So if I've got Taunt out there and I'm attacking a taunted target, I have to pick that target. I can use any of my abilities, but I have to pick that target. Some of the things that they've noted, I think, is that Veil is not overridden. So Taunt will override a Veil in that kind of 50-50. So if you have 3 Veil targets out and one of them's got Taunt, it will pick the taunted target even if they're veiled. And I think as well, things like Mischief Head will bypass it because it's doing a specific targeting. It targets based on buffs. And I think also the Decay Head. This won't be a solution for the Decay Head because you need to provoke to stop the A2 and A3. And it also will target the lowest health HP anyone anyway. But that's how Taunt works. I'm sure we'll do more content specifically on Taunt, but just a quick TLDR. So what is Greenwarden Ruarc doing? Well, we can see he attacks one enemy and transfers all debuffs from this champion to the target and then heals himself for how many debuffs he transfers. It's a bit like Lissandra's A1. And it's good because you don't require actually to send the debuffs back. So you can just kind of get rid of them. It may not necessarily place on the enemy, but you can get them off you. So if you get rid of them, whether or not you have to place them to get the heal is questionable, but that's still a very strong heal if you can get a lot. If you've got like 4 debuffs, it's like a 20% heal. Then we've got an A2, attacks all enemies, has an 80% chance of placing a 50% decreased attack for 2 turns. Also steals all continuous heal buffs from each enemy. This effect cannot be resisted. This is a Wither counter. That's what this has been designed for. Champions like Duchess, Wither, a Pardin Clanfather if you see him around. Champions that do continuous heals, this is going to counter because he's going to steal them off on a 3-turn cooldown. Nice to have an AoE decrease attack, 3-turn cooldown, 2-turn duration. If you pull him early in your account, there's your decrease attack champion. And then we get the Taunt. Call of the Wild, 4-turn cooldown when booked, places a Taunt buff, increased defense, and strengthen on himself for 2 turns. That's pretty good. It means it's a 2-turn provoke. It forces you to attack him. If you put him on a protection set or you can protect this Taunt buff, that's pretty strong, right? I know you can't increase its duration. You can't extend Taunt, but I don't know if you can protect it and various other things. But you can remove it, obviously. Knight of the Veins is this passive. Whenever an ally loses 10% of their max HP, get a shield. That's basically Vergis passive. There's no cooldown to it. So if you hit someone, they get a shield. If you hit them again, they get another shield. If you keep hitting them, they get another shield. That's the idea. That could be quite powerful in a good setup, especially in PvE wave content where you are taking a few hits here or there. That could be actually quite strong. So we've got a 30% aura as well. Now, what I would say is, although he's got taunt, the rest of his kit is a little underwhelming. I'm not really too worried about him taking damage because he's defense-based. He's got like really high base defense. You know, this is on the upper scale, nearly like the top defense range, 1500 nearly. He's probably not taking a lot of damage, so I don't need self-healing. The decreased attack is nice to have, and this not requiring accuracy here means he doesn't require any accuracy for that continuous heal. But the problem is he'll still require accuracy for the decreased attack. So if this A2 was both effects can't be resisted, then it would be a really good build, because effectively you go all out defense and HP, you forget accuracy and you forget that decreased attack, because it's all going to place, it's all going to be fine. But because you need accuracy for decreased attack, and you kind of want that with this guy, you still need to build accuracy. So therefore, this resistance doesn't really matter unless you're really picking on people with high resist in the arena, which means that decreased attack may not be required. So potentially it's not a problem. I'm not super fussed about taunt. I don't think it's going to be that game changing, because there's so few champions that have it, right? I mean, we've had increased resistance out for a while, and there's like 2 champions that have it, and you never see it around. And I think taunt might be the same for a while, but it's cool that we've got like a non-accuracy requirement provoke set, right? Because essentially taunt is a buff, so you don't need accuracy for that. This shield could be really strong. We've rated him 4-star just because of his support potential. He's probably going to be a bit of a carry if the Faction Wars comes out. Pretty okay in arena defense, but nothing that I would sit here and say is crazy. He's probably very good for places like Scarab King, because obviously anytime someone gets hit by Scarab, he's going to replace the shield, so you have that innate shield up all the time. You don't need Blood Shield, you don't need a shielder. He's going to do that in Scarab. He can probably solo it as well. So that's how we have rated Greenwarden Ruarc. Next up is King Gallcober. Gallcober, I'm not really sure how to say that properly. Pretty mean looking blue-eyed guy. I don't know what he's wearing, but it looks like some sort of lizard or dragon. He is another support champion. So we're seeing a bit of a trend that these Sylvan Watchers are quite support defense heavy. There's no real big nuker, although there is a Void Legend we're going to talk about in a second. But this, again, really good base speed, 108. A bit lower defense, but high HP. That's more traditional with how support champions are built. Doesn't look like he's going to be doing any damage from his base stats here. So what does this champion do? Tangle Staff. He attacks one enemy. He places a shield buff for 2 turns on the ally with the lowest HP. The value is based on the ally's max HP. So that's a little bit negative, because if you've got a low HP champion, then the shield is going to be low as well. If it was based on his HP, that would be a bit better. But it's still an A1 shield. It's not too bad. And it is for 2 turns, so you can get more than one out as well. Then we've got Vitriolic Thorns. A 3-turn cooldown when booked. Attacks all enemies. 100% chance to remove all buffs. Places a 5% poison debuff for 2 turns on each enemy for every buff they've removed. And then he'll place block buffs on all enemies for 1 turn. So he places block buffs. That's pretty good. There's not that many champions with 100% AoE block buffs in the game that doesn't require some conditions. You know, Mighty Uko is pretty good, but if they get the poison cloud out, that's a bit of a problem. Mind you, this would do the same because it would weak hit, but essentially there's some conditional ones. Ugo still tends to be the sort of master block buffs champion unless you have some really powerful legendaries. So it's good that we've got another one, and it's actually quite strong if there's a lot of buffs being put out there. So if you've got an arena team and you can get his accuracy quite high, I mean, he's got a base accuracy of about 15, so he gets a little bit of a boost. If you can get him up to like 600-700 accuracy, you could full buff strip maybe if you don't get polymorphed, and then you place a lot of poisons out. Now the poison isn't necessarily crazy, but you do buff remove, which is quite strong. Next up we have Hypertrophy. His A3 removes all debuffs from all allies, then places a continuous heal for 1 turn on each ally for every debuff removed. So that's a pretty powerful ability. If you full cleanse, you full heal, they're gonna fully heal back up if there's anything like 4 debuffs on there. That's quite a strong ability on a 3-turn cooldown. He also then places a shield equal to his max HP, 25%, which he's got about 20,000, so that's going to be a monstrous shield. That's really powerful, that kit. That's a powerful ability. In arena, if you put him in Stone Skin, that's a full cleanse. Everyone's back up to full HP when they proc their turns. That's insane. That's really strong. Then we've got his passive. Whenever an enemy under a poison debuff attacks an ally under a shield buff, instantly activates one poison debuff on that enemy, also activates one continuous heal on the attacked ally. So that's kind of cool. So you're getting like kind of that passive activation. So as long as the shield survives, as long as there's continuous heals up, as long as the poisons are up, then you're activating everything. So you might not kill them. The only downside is obviously if you just kill the target with, if that enemy just comes and nukes your target, then nothing can happen, right? But yeah, interesting kit. It's a bit awkward if you can't get any buff cleanses, because how do you get the poisons out? And if you can't get the poisons out, then you don't activate the passive. You're going to have to rely on another poisoner. But at least this isn't his poisons, and it isn't his continuous heals, right? It's any poison, any continuous heal. So if you pair him with a Whiff of the Crown and another poisoner, this passive is going to go ham. You're going to be permanently healed. Your team will never die. So potentially a really powerful champion. We've got him at 4.5. We've got him as 5 out of 5 in Arena. Makes sense. We've got him as 5 in Hydra, 5 in Doom Tower, 5 in Ice Golem. He's just going to carry your team so hard in terms of healing. Nether Spider, full cleanse, gets rid of those poisons into a continuous heals. Obviously, you would probably want to disable the A2 in Nether Spider. You don't really want to be removing the counterattacks. But in terms of like the A3 cleanse, it's really powerful. And then Scarab King also, because he's got a 3-turn shield if you can extend it. That's pretty good. Overall, basically a godlike carry healer. You put him in your team, you probably will not die. Then we come to Ailil. He is the one that probably everyone will talk about in this video. Everyone will be like, what's your opinion on Ailil? What do you think about him? He looks broken, but now that I've seen the playtest, I actually think he's very weak for a Void Legendary. So first off, the attack is extremely high, 1630. That's like up there with the top 10 attacks in the game. 105 base speed, really quite like a very fast base speed for an attack-based champion. What does this kit have? So we get the Gnarl Scythe, attacks one enemy, steals all buffs from the target the first time he hits them with this skill. That effect cannot be resisted, so you don't need accuracy. Each subsequent time this attack hits an enemy, no buffs will be stolen, but instead he'll deal more damage based on the buff. I don't really get why we have to have this complexity, but essentially what it means is if I've got 4 enemies, I attack enemy 1. The first time I attack him, I steal the buffs. The second time, I basically do extra damage based on the buffs he's got. I just want to keep stealing the buffs. I don't know why I have to have that problem. But yeah, it's pretty nice that it's an irresistible steal every buff from any target. The only thing to note, the way that Stone Skin works is a 50-50. So if you try to steal the buff, you've got to roll the 50-50 before you can steal it. But if you can roll the 50, then you can steal the Stone Skin off people. So that's potentially really powerful. The damage, however, on this A1 when we've watched it on Hellhades stream is mid-tier. It's not crazy. It's not awful, but it's not crazy damage dealer. Then we've got Pierce the Carapace. I can never say that word. It's a 3-turn cooldown. Now this is the ability that everyone would be looking at. It attacks one enemy. It ignores Strengthen, Stone Skin, Increased Defense, and Ally Protection. If it kills an enemy, he fully heals himself and places a Stone Skin buff on himself for 1 turn. Now this reads like, pick a Necret protected target and take him out. Because you ignore the ally protection that Necret gives, you ignore the increased defense, the block debuff doesn't matter, any strengthen, any stone skin, it doesn't matter, you pick him, they die. Now the problem is, this skill has no innate ignore defense capability, nor does it ignore shields. So things like reaction and bolster really hard counter this ability. And if it doesn't kill someone, you don't get the stone skin, you lose the value. And the damage doesn't seem to be that high. It looks pretty weak source in the arena. Now we don't know whether that's the case if it's bugged. I don't have the test server to really do any big damage, but from the test streams that Hellhades was doing, it didn't look like it did enough damage to justify himself. Then we've got Chill Wind of Autumn. It's a 4-turn cooldown, book to 3-turn AoE. Before attacking, removes any increased defense on any target and replaces it with decreased defense for 2 turns. And then it removes Strengthen and it replaces it with Weaken. So we swap the buff to the debuff. Then we place block buffs for 1 turn on enemies not under increased defense and strengthen. So conceptually, I take the buffs away, I put the debuffs. Now that they're not there, I'm going to put block buffs out. The block buffs, however, will not ignore block debuffs. So he's not removing the block debuffs. If that's already out there, that's not going to work. So you can't pick on a Necret protected target with this ability and place those debuffs out there. It'll remove the buff, but it won't replace the buff. It won't put the debuff out there. And it therefore won't place block buffs as well because you've got the block debuffs out. So that's the problem. The buff removal, however, and the debuff placement, however, cannot be resisted. So again, this kit requires no accuracy. That's really powerful. The AoE nuke is pretty good, although again, it's not like groundbreakingly strong. Then we get the passive. Increases this champion's HP by 2,000 and defense by 100 for every 1,000 attack you have. You've got about 1,630 base, so that's probably going to be for most high-end players around about 7,000 attack. So you can get about 14,000 HP and about 700 defense. Effectively, you make him tanky without needing to make him tanky because you're making him deal damage. It's a natural byproduct. And then we also have this kind of mental part of his passive. Fills this champion's turn meter by 10% whenever they receive a buff. So you put Necra out, he gets an instant 30% turn meter fill. You put like 2 more buffs on him, that's 20% turn meter fill. This has no cooldown. That's actually really powerful because you can run in extremely slow to try and mitigate some of these problems with his damage ability and then get him to take turns quicker than the enemy potentially, depending on how it works. He also has an aura increases ally crit rate in all battles. Now, the only problem I have with him is he's one-dimensional. He is designed for the arena. He's designed to kill people in the arena. That is his only real purpose. Yes, this ability here is quite nice, but to be honest, it's not doing anything special. It's not doing anything unique. There's loads of champions. Like you're probably going to be bringing someone like a Lydia or a Venus or someone to bring the decreased defense and weaken anyway. It's cool that it removes it, but if you're not removing the block debuffs, then it's not going to work anyway. So he's there to basically pick someone in arena, kill them, get stone skill, pick another one, kill them. That's the idea. The A2 doesn't deal enough damage, or it's bugged, and the A3 is not strong enough on its own to be an AoE nuker, so he kind of becomes a bit meh. Now we've rated him at 4-star and given him really high ratings in the arena. This could change based on more testing. It's going to be one of those champions that requires a bit more play testing to actually know for sure, but so far there's no reason why you would run him in, say, Dark Fae, because he has no turn meter. You wouldn't run him in Dreadhorn, there's no decrease accuracy. You wouldn't run him in Celestial Griffin or Eternal Dragon. There's no effects that he brings that's going to make this better, because this decreased defense and weaken is conditioned on the fact that he removes increased defense and strengthen. So he can't just place these debuffs. So that's the problem with this kit. It requires the right setup. It's been designed to basically counter the arena meta, but he doesn't do enough damage to counter the arena meta. So he could end up being Fortis 2.0. But he looks pretty cool, right? So maybe there's some strategies out there. Maybe I'm being a little bit doomsday-ish here. But I don't think he's going to be the meta breaker that everyone reading his kit thinks he will be. I don't think he's as strong as he sounds. I think people will just go back to their 80% ignore defense barons and kill people that way. So that's the end of this video. I wanted to split it up because it would be really long. We're going to look at epics tomorrow in more detail, and there are some really powerful epics and really unique epics in this faction. But I hope that was a bit of an insight to give you my opinions on the new champions. I'm really excited we've got a new faction. I think it kind of shakes up the game and makes it feel a bit more fresh. They look awesome. The backdrop looks awesome. And yeah, let's hope that we can actually get hold of some of these champions. Let's hope we get like a guaranteed legendary or a guaranteed epic in the coming future for one of these champions that we're getting added in this patch. But until tomorrow, I will catch you in the next video.